Hey, Happy New Year, and welcome to Caleb's Corner, our first review of 2023. And today we are looking at the Star Wars The Black Series Obi-Wan Kenobi Wondering Jedi variant of the titular character Obi-Wan Kenobi himself from the show Kenobi, which is a test to see how many times I can say Kenobi in the intro of a video, I suppose. And this will be our second Black Series review for the channel. Based on initial reactions straight out of the box, I do think I like this one a tad bit more than Vader. The soft goods are way better proportioned. I don't feel like his cloak is like overbearingly large the way I thought Vader's cape was, but we'll get to that in a second. First, let's go ahead and take a look at our articulation. And in order to do that better, let's go ahead and get this cloak off of Obi-Wan. That way we can get a more complete look at how this figure composes. And with his lightsaber and robe out of the way, his head will go down this far and up this far. His head will of course be able to rotate 360 degrees, and I notice on this figure his neck is articulated independently of his head, which does feel like it might be on a ball joint, but it does move totally independent of his shoulders and his head, which is nice. His arm will go up to a 90 degrees, which is stopped by the sculpt of his chest tunic area where the shoulder joint meets the body, which prevents it from going further. You can rotate it in the socket there and of course go all the way around, and you will get a single jointed elbow, which gives you a little bit past 90 degrees, which is good for a single joint, though a double would still be better. You will get a rotation off of that elbow joint, and you will still lack a bicep and forearm cut on these figures. You will get a full rotation on his wrist here, and something I noticed on this figure, which I did complain about on the Vader figure as well, Vader lacked any vertical joint pins on his hands. Obi-Wan does in fact have those vertical joints, which is exactly what I wanted out of these Black Series figures for those really nice nuanced poses with lightsabers and with weapons, so you can get a super nice up and down pivot on these wrists. However, because of the way his sleeves are sculpted, you can't use these vertical points of articulation at all, so you get that much, and that's literally it out of his right hand, and his right hand only. His left hand has the same vertical pin, but because of the sculpting on the sleeve, you can't use it whatsoever. So it's a plus that we get them. It's a huge negative that we can't use them at all. So we have them, but we can't use them, so it just worthless. I don't understand it. For his waist, you get a ball joint on the waist, which will give you a fair range of motion. You will get a 360 degrees spin out of it. Cranking it backwards, he'll go that far back and that far forward, and you get a decent amount of play side to side, and that articulation doesn't break up the sculpt too much either. As for his legs, he will kick forward this far, which is greatly inhibited by that soft plastic lower tunic that we're getting there, and he'll go backwards about that far, again restricted from that soft plastic tunic. He does get an upper thigh cut, which I thought was odd, but it is present, and you will get a single jointed knee, which gets you that much movement out of it. Again, don't know why we're not doing double joints, and you can't pivot off of that. You do get no boot cut, and his feet will go this far forward and that far upwards, and you do get an ankle rocker off of that as well, though my ankle joints on my Obi-Wan are super flimsy, and it makes making him stand a little difficult. As for accessories, Obi-Wan does come with his ever iconic lightsaber, which, just like Vader's lightsaber, has a removable lightsaber blade, which I think is a really nice touch. He does also come with the blaster that he uses over the course of the Disney Plus Kenobi show, which also has a holster right on his belt for safekeeping, which is held in place with a little plastic strap that goes over the blaster and pegs into the side of the holster. Another accessory we get with Obi-Wan here is the droid Lola, which is young Leia's faithful companion throughout the course of the Kenobi show. And Lola also has two of her own accessories, the first being a little saw blade, and that will peg into this tiny hole right at the front of the droid, so you can display her with that out as her little multi-tool that she'll use in the show. Additionally, you can also remove the tiny feet on the bottom of Lola here, that those are just held in with a little ball joint, so those pop right out. Be super careful because that plastic is thin, and then you can peg in this clear translucent plastic piece that does simulate like Lola hovering. And at the bottom of that translucent plastic, there's a U-gap, which you can slide over one of Obi-Wan's fingers, so it looks like Lola is hovering over Obi-Wan's hand, which I thought was super cute. And because it utilizes a ball joint connection piece, you actually can tilt Lola in any direction, and you actually get like this little articulated hovering Lola figure, and the two wings on the top of the droid are articulated as well. So with the combination of the articulated wings and the ball jointed base, you can actually get quite a bit of little nuance out of this little droid, which was not something I expected looking at it in the package, and something I enjoyed a lot more than I thought I would as an accessory inclusion for Obi-Wan. And of course, Obi-Wan has the soft goods cloak that he wears out of the packaging, and lastly, his lightsaber has a peg that allows you to attach his lightsaber to the side of his belt. And the sculpt on this figure is fantastic. I think everything on this figure looks really great sculpt-wise. The tunic looks great, the pants, the leather, everything looks fantastic. The head sculpt especially is fantastic. This is the spitting image of Ewan McGregor. Everything about this head sculpt is perfect. The head scan and a great paint application really combos well together to create this like really awesome head sculpt. I'm assuming it's head scanned and nobody did an actual like hand 3D sculpt of Ewan McGregor's face. If they did, they killed it, and they need a raise. The head looks fantastic. The paint, I do think, is lacking. Most of what you're seeing is just done in whatever color the plastic is molded in, unless you're getting a little bit like metallic color on belts or the lightsaber or the blaster, which all of which receive a very clean paint job. I did notice that the flesh tone is inconsistent when you look at the exposed chest at the top of the tunic compared to the flesh tone used on the neck and face. The exposed chest flesh has this very peachy Crayola kind of look. It doesn't look natural, whereas the face and neck look fantastic. And here is a quick close-up of the lightsaber. Like I said, super clean and nothing to complain about here. And here he is with his soft goods cloak back on. I love this cloak. It's my favorite soft goods so far in the Black Series figures that we've looked at compared to what we saw on Vader. It's not too big. It doesn't fold on itself weird. It folds on itself super nice. I like the way it like kind of billows around the character. It doesn't envelop him the way like Vader's cape did. I think it looks great. The material they use is also really nice. My only complaint is how the hood sits. If you look on the sides here, it does sit really high on Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan's head here. I think it's too tall compared to the box art. As you see, it sets a lot flatter. So I wish they used like a different material or doubled up on the material on the hood so it was a little heavier. That's really my only complaint there. Alright, final thoughts on our Star Wars The Black Series Obi-Wan Kenobi Wondering Jedi figure. I kind of love it. I was surprised a lot by this figure. I was a little underwhelmed with Vader, but looking at Obi-Wan here, I think he's great. I think the accessories are fantastic between the blaster, the lightsaber. The lightsaber is super well painted, just like Vader's was. Whatever system they have for painting lightsabers is like super clean. They need to keep doing it. It looks great. I think the soft goods cloak looks really fantastic on him. I love the way it sits on him in billows, except for the hood, which is a little bit too tall. I think Lola, for me, was a surprise inclusion in terms of how much I enjoyed it. Looking at it in the box, I thought it was weird, but I guess it would be kind of odd to give us like a Black Series Leia figure, so putting Lola in with Obi-Wan was great. Obi-Wan does spend a bit of time with the droid in the show as well, but with a combination of the ball jointed legs and like the little hovered plastic piece for Lola and the articulated wings on top of her, I think there's so much nuance and little character you can pull out in posing her. I think she's fantastic. My only real complaints are going to be similar to what I said with Vader, so I still wish we had our double jointed knees and double jointed elbows on this figure. They give you so much more range and nuance for posing with figures. I had somebody tell me that the reason why we don't get them in Black Series figures as much is that supposedly the double jointed knees and elbows we've had in Black Series figures in the past weren't as good as the current single jointed joints, which I have a hard time believing because you're only getting 90, if not a little bit past that on these figures. So I wish we had those double jointed pieces on these figures. I also wish I didn't get such soft ankle joints on this figure. My figure for Obi-Wan here happens to be a little soft in the ankle area, so he does wobble a bit, which makes some more dynamic poses a little more difficult, but once I put him in a really solid stance, he is perfectly fine. So with all that being said, I think this Obi-Wan figure earns an 8.5 out of 10. I think he is a fantastic figure and definitely worthy of the shelf space and the spot in your collection. I have enjoyed him so much. much. But that is going to do it for this review. Thank you, as always, for sticking around to the end and watching all the way through. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like and let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on this figure and whatever you want to see me review next on the channel. If you want to see more content like this and more, feel free to subscribe and hit the bell notification button so you can stay up to date with everything we are doing here in 2023. And I will see you next time here at Caleb's Corner.